Hi everyone, my name is Marc Shumsker. You may know me as Truepokerdealer, and right now I'm going to talk to you about how to deal a double board bomb pot. This is going to be a PLO hand. I've already gone over the more core concepts of a double board bomb pot with Texas Hold'em, where I dealt a $5 ante double board bomb pot for Texas Hold'em. So I'm going to go over just the details that are particularly about PLO and how to deal this one, which is a little bit different than the Hold'em one. It's also very similar. For example, we talked about the button position and all that in the other video, so you can go check that out here if you want. And a reminder to you that I'm just sort of teaching the concepts of this. This isn't an official video with the universal rules on how to deal this game. I've actually been asked by some of the top people in the industry if I've created any content on this before, because there is no real universal way to deal this. So I'm just going to teach you one method, and at times I'll mention there's other ways to do stuff. Just keep in mind, whatever your supervisor says at the poker room that you're working at or playing at, that's the rule, okay? So I'm giving you the basics so that you could feel comfortable if you wanted to go in and play it or deal it, specifically for dealing. So the first thing about the PLO double board bomb pot. This is usually the first hand of your down as a dealer at a new table, and what that means is down is the time that you're at the table. When you tap in and tap out the previous dealer, the first hand that you're going to deal at a lot of poker rooms is going to be this, the double board bomb pot. Now, I have also come across games that are only this over and over and over again. That's possible too. And then there's other versions. You could do two in a row, whatever. But for the most part, you're looking at one hand when you first get to a table. And we talked earlier about how 1-2 no limit, sometimes even 1-3 no limit, is a Hold'em double board bomb pot, or maybe a single board bomb pot, depending on what your state allows. It's common to see a PLO double board bomb pot, Pot Limit Omaha, when you're dealing a game like 2-5, even no limit Texas Hold'em, because it's a little bit of a higher stakes game and the players like the action of the PLO double board bomb pot. So games that I deal this particular version in with a $15 ante for each player, 2-5 no limit Texas Hold'em, 1-2 pot limit with a $5 bring in, 2-5 pot limit. And then I've also dealt for like the 1-2 PLO or the 2-2 PLO. You might see a slightly lower stake Pot Limit Omaha double board bomb pot. And then if the game's bigger, then the PLO bomb pot ante gets bigger as well. So we're going to just do the demo with $15 per person. And just like we talked about earlier, when you first get to the table, I recommend making some small talk and welcoming yourself to the table, saying hi to everybody, because when you first get here, the previous hand was whatever the game is. And so this is going to be different for everybody. And they're going to forget to ante unless you're sort of engaging with them. So like when I sit down, I say hi, I say bomb pot everyone, right? I just sort of like get it out of the way. Because right now, after I've sat at the table, I'm going to swap the decks. I might inspect the deck. I do whatever makes sense there. And then I'm going to go riffle, riffle, box, riffle. And this is not a universal procedure. It's just what I like. And then I stop before the cut, sort of old school tournament style. And then I'm going to go around and collect everybody's ante. In this case, we're doing a demonstration of $15 per player. And so whether it's 10, 15, whatever it is. Now, unlike the Texas Hold'em bomb pot, in this one, you need to keep track of the pot. So here, you might think 15 times 9 or 15 times 6, like, oh, that's a little bit of math. What am I going to do? The truth is, after a very short period of time in dealing these games, 15 times 6 is not any calculation. It's memorization, just like 10 times 8 is 80, and we don't have to think about that. So this is $90 here. I know right off the top of my head, 9 times 15 is 135. I don't have to do that math anymore because I've seen this so many times it becomes memorization, which is great, makes things a lot easier. Also, I know 135 times 4 is 540. That's not a calculation anymore because that happens so much. You get 9 players pre-flop, somebody bets the pot, 3 callers. They just get used to that. It's really nice in Pot Limit Omaha when some of those numbers really start to just dig in and you don't have to think about them anymore. But anyway, here we are. I like going around the table in one direction. Let's say that this player hasn't actually put their ante out yet. I'm going to go like this. I take the 15, I take the 15, I clearly drop 10, give them their change. I'm sliding this chip. I do it actually just like that. I slide this chip over to where I put my pot. I'm stacking these up. Now, I've gone around the table this way on purpose. Why? Because when I get to this player, there's no confusion. I've taken from here, 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 and here, and they have not paid yet. And I very, very casually say, would you like to play the bomb pot? Why? Because in the poker room that I work at, it's not a required hand to play. We give them the option. If they're not here, we assume that they're out of the bomb pot. And again, different poker rooms might have different rule sets. I'm just telling you one way to think about it, one way to do it. So he says, no, I'm not going to play, or he says, yes, I'm going to play. I've had one player that says, don't ever ask me again. I never play bomb pot. You dealers need to know that. And I'm like, I will never ask you again, right? I don't need to make a big deal about the aggression. I can laugh about it with you here. So we get these last ones, and just like in the Hold'em video, I'm stacking these chips up. Now, if I had forgotten whether I riffle, box riffle, then I would just do it again, even if it's 1% that I didn't. You don't want to deal out an unshuffled deck. And you know what? Just for the sake of proving that, I am 100% sure that I did this, but I did a lot more talking than I normally do at this stage in a bomb pot. It feels a little uncomfortable for so much time to go by without actually shuffling and then cutting. So here we go. We're going to start and just deal around now. Literally, I've collected all the antes. All I have to do is just pitch out the cards to all the players. We talked about the button scenarios in the other video. I'm not going to talk about that again. But just in case, do note, if you're using the same button as the regular table, in this case, like we're assuming that this is the player on the button seat. If you're using the same button, most poker rooms are not going to move the button after that hand. It's going to stay there so they get their regular poker game hand with the button. The bomb pot is sort of like a separate game within the game at the same table. Okay, so just like in the Hold'em video, we're burning once here. This is PLO. Because it's PLO, it's actually even more clear now why we burn once. I explained in the Hold'em video that it has to do with not worrying about the second flop. Like this card's not going to be exposed because you bring them all at once, right? So it's sort of like a burn before you bring cards. But in these games, a lot of the time you'll actually get 9 players in the bomb pot. And if you burn twice for each street, like once before this flop, once before this flop, you're going to end up using every single card in the deck to get all the way to the end, including the card, just touching the cut card on the bottom. There are reasons that we prefer not to use that card. Occasionally in some games, they just don't worry about it. And I totally get that. But as a general rule, why do it if it doesn't really matter? We talked about how when you burn this card, there's 6 cards that all come out at once. So it doesn't help in any way to have another burn card before this flop, other than maybe to not confuse dealers. I like it this way. So now we have 15 times 6, that's $90. Of course, I only say that to myself. Don't say it out loud unless somebody asks. And we go check, 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 check. This player bets 75. And this player calls 75. This player calls 75. This player calls 75. And everybody's in, because we want to make this as interesting as possible. And so yes, I'm stacking this pot because this ends up being a split pot game. I don't know actually if the poker room that I work at has that as procedure. It's just sense to me, common sense. One thing about stacking the pot, so I'm going to bring all these bets in here. I'm going to stack them like this, and then I'm going to go bring the next street. Before I do that though, I want to show you something. Some poker rooms will allow you, we'll put all the bets back where they were. And let's make it like this, where these players are splashing. Players, if you're a player and you're watching this, if you're playing a split pot game, including this, please stack your bets. It makes it much easier to stack them afterwards. Not every dealer takes advantage of that the way I do, but please stack your bets whenever you can, especially if you're calling and there's no tell on it. So standard procedure says you bring the bets in and then you bring the next cards. You don't have to do that at every poker room. The ones that make you, they have a good reason. It prevents mistakes. But I just want to do it the other way for a second to demonstrate something to you. So I'm going to bring the turns right now. And the action starts here. So I'm taking this first. And I'm going across here. And I'm doing it pretty quickly. Now, if I'm over here and I'm stacking this up and I'm spending time with the chips, let's say that they were knocked down, this player right here, and to a degree this player here and anyone on that side, can't see the board. And in a bomb pot, especially a double board PLO bomb pot, my arm in the way right here is brutal for their experience. So whatever you do, whether you leave the bets out there or you bring them in, I'm telling you to stack the pot, but I want you to do it mindfully. I literally pay attention when I'm dealing, and I wait for these players to be done with whatever they're doing. I don't let myself get in their way, because I don't want it to be harder for them to play this hand than the other players at the table. That might sometimes mean waiting a second or going in a different order than I normally do to protect that for them. I don't want it to be hard for them to see the board. I always try to go when it's someone else's turn, then I'm doing my stuff over here. And so now it's this player's turn here, and we'll say check, check, check. This player goes all in. So when this player goes all in, here's my all in button. They're going to push their chips out like this. And this is an interesting one, right? I know how much the pot is right now. Do you? And because I know how much the pot is, I know that this is less than the pot. And the question is, you know, is it out of integrity to just start counting this right away? So I would say in a PLO hand like this, the chances of them not getting a call with 2 boards is almost next to nothing. The amount does influence it a little bit. You know, I'll admit this, and I think it's better for everybody this way. The technical rule is you don't count this in most poker rooms until somebody asks, and you can totally do that. An advanced way to do this would be to pretend like you can't tell if it's the amount of the pot or not, right? Because in pot limit, the pot right now is 540. So in pot limit, oh, just to go over it, it was 75 times 6, that's 450, plus 90, that's 540. So in this case right here, if I sort of just start counting it and pretending like I don't know if it's pot or not, because in a pot-sized game, look at that. In a pot-sized game, if this bet's more than 540, I actually have to cut out 540 and give the rest back, find out if they're all in or they're not all in. I don't technically know. Like if he had another 200 or 100, it might be close enough that I have no choice but to count it. So just to make it simpler, because you know, it's also, if someone says pot right away, it's going to make it really take a long time to figure out how much that is. Now I'm sort of ready to go. I think it's fine in this particular scenario to just count it and have it be done. But if your poker room is real strict about stuff like that, then do what they say, of course. So anyway, here we've got 360. You see that? 1, 2, 3. Put it here so you can see. 50, 60. All right. And I'm actually going to go like that. 360. Nice and visually easy to see. And then this player goes all in. Why not, right? And so this is a counted stack already. I can actually just go like this. And because I have a second dealer button, or all-in button rather, I'll just give that to them too. And I've counted this amount too. Why? Because it's close to this original amount here. And so now this player is all in as well. And we're going to let everybody call going around in this hand. And believe it or not, this happens. People's whole stacks go in sometimes in these games. The PLO double board bomb pot can be wild. And just so to make sure that the dealer doesn't swipe these, we're going to put a little Studs Poker Club card cover, spinning card cover on there. That was a really fun poker room for me. I helped open it back in 2009 in South Florida. Also, it's good to note that the loose change doesn't play in this game in most poker rooms. So over here, they're going to call. It's going to be 6-15. So we're going to make this easy. 6-15. And actually, we're going to go like that to make it even easier. So here we are. We're pretty deep into this hand. And we've got a pretty big pot to keep track of. And that brings me to an interesting point. So sometimes a PLO dealer might relax, and when the pot gets to a certain point, if there's no way that 2 players have that amount, then it doesn't actually matter, because you know anyone's going to be all in if they were to bet that large amount. But every once in a while, especially in a PLO bomb pot double board game, you might get a player, when I bring all this in, that they say how much is in the pot when they're faced with an all-in and they're deciding whether to call. They can ask that question in order to calculate pot odds, and it is an available thing. So in these games, keep in mind, you don't want to totally let go of every number and forget what the amount is in there. You want to have the ability to figure it out even if you don't have it. And what I mean by that is, here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to bring in this 360 from everybody. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 60. So because I have this here, I'm going to start just leaving these stacked like this, leaving this amount here and going around the table in one direction and taking that amount and then taking this amount last makes it the clears for everybody. I'm not saying that you need to do this if your poker room doesn't say to do this. I do this myself because it makes it very clear. And I'm going to bring these in and stack them as I go, just in case somebody gets confused. It's not even about whether it's right or not. It's about whether or not somebody gets confused. And you see earlier how I had the players give these amounts. Maybe now you see a little bit why. Instead of just all black chips where I had to make difficult change, I can actually just do this smoothly on my own. So we got 360. And sometimes the dealer might just go in and they might just take the, I've seen this before where they take the 360 and they go, you can't really do that. It's not clear to everyone that you have the right amount in your hand. So you do need to, if you're going to take it all like this, you do still need to show it, right? Just make it a little bit easier for you like that. So here we go. There's these, and then there's this, and here's our main pot. And we're going to be communicating as we go. Very important. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to bring this in a little bit tighter now that this is all in the middle. Fix my burns. It's okay to go a little slow. Obviously, the players want to get their hands out quickly, but it's okay. And also right here, I'm just sort of verifying what I've got. 1, 2, 45, 55. Not bad. And so we've got 255. Actually, what did I just say, right? Take this one last. No, they're all the same. It's fine. 255. So we're going to put this pot over here. Normally this player would have their cards back a little further. This would be back a little further. 255, 255, 255. They don't need to be upside down or right side up. I'm just doing that because later it'll be easier to combine them if they're all the same. Okay, so I said earlier you want to stack these hands as you go. You do want to stack these as you go, but getting the hand going is the most important thing. Also, it's worth saying, okay, what's the easiest way to calculate what just happened? So I would say you've got 615 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 3,075. These numbers get a little easier as you get more experience with it. So 3,075 plus you had 540. So 3,575, 3,615 plus 360, 3,975. Hopefully I'm right. 3,975. And I'm looking around the table and they may actually have that in their stacks. I don't know. It's only one way to find out, right? So this player says pot. Might as well challenge myself. Why? Because I want you to watch this video for longer. So here we go. So that's 1,500, 2,000. And we can see here that this is just going to end up being an all-in. 25, 26, 27. You know, you would normally ask them to push their chips forward. Dear Lord, they drop chips on the floor, really. So we've got 15, 25, 3,000, 31. By the way, I'm just going to take this all in button and move it over here. 3140. So look, if nothing else, this is helping you think about how to organize this money as it's displayed. And this should really be a little bit more over here. It's okay. So we've got 3,140. And this player calls. You know, I started cutting the chips sideways with my thumb because at Texas Card House, they get so many players all the time that the chips are very sticky. And when I go to cut this way, you really have to cut them. And I prefer to cut more like casually. Okay. So over here, we've got 1,000, 15, 16, 17, 18, 1805. Check that one more time. 1,000, 15, 16, 17, 1805. And we'll let this player call the 3140. It's nice when they have a lot of black chips. 31, 40. And we'll have this player call too. Okay, so this player has 5, 15, 17, 18, 40. Okay, so as a reminder, and this can be hard to keep track of, this player is eligible for this player's in for this. This is definitely going to be a mess at the end no matter who wins, and you know what? Great. You should see, I'm not kidding when I say I do something like this once a week when I'm dealing at Texas Card House in Dallas. Like, these games get very, very big pots, and it's fun as a dealer. Like, right now I'm thinking about, okay, keep track of everything, blah, blah, blah. But when I'm dealing those games, I'm like, this is interesting. Like, this is real money being tossed around. It's pretty crazy. So it looks like these are both short stacks. So we're going to do 1805, and I'm going to be real careful and make sure here. I'm going to talk my game. It's going to sound like this. I'll pretend that I'm dealing the game right now. All right, over here is our short stack. We've got 14, 15, 16, 17, 1805. And just to make sure, we've got 5, 1500, 17, 18, 40. So this is the short stack. You both have more than that. So I'm going to take 1805. I'm not doing anything tricky in this hand. I don't want to. I'm just making it as clear and as clean as I can. I'm going to leave this initial 1805 right here. I am going to stack this, and I'll put that out a little and put this here just to make it a little bit more clear. So I'm going to go around the table this way. You could go this way, it doesn't matter. So here we've got 1805. Great. And I'm just putting it here. Here we've got, now we already counted it, so we know that this is 40. Oh, actually, no, 35, that's right. So 1805, 5, 15, 17, 1805. We're going to leave the 35 there. Why am I putting this over here? Because this player is all in for this next pot. It's just going to make it a little easier for me that way. These pots are really, really difficult right now. They're full of dirty stacks and all that, and so we're going to be real deliberate when we clean this up later. So now here we got 15. I'm taking the largest denomination chips that I can. It's going to make it a lot easier. 16, 17, well, I say that, but now I've got these beautiful stacks. I don't want to ruin them. 05. So I've got 15, 16, 17, 18, 05. This was just the thing to do. It's fine. You got to remember, no, don't take that chip over there. You got to just take what you're supposed to take. All right. So this wide area here is all one pot. I am going to stack this up, sort of make this a little bit cleaner of a section. Now we're going to do 35 and 35. That should just be what's left over here. 35, 35. I'm putting it in front of the player it belongs to. They were all ending in 40, so it worked out that way. And then what's left should be 13 and 13, which it is. So for this belongs to this player, this belongs to this player. What I do in bomb pots like this is I leave the final all-ins against each other in front of the players that they're in relation to. I do that because it's just easier than bringing it all in. I guess in this case it's 13 in black. I could just bring it in, but it helps me remember who's showing down first too. So now all the action's complete. So here we go. Here's the rivers. Now normally you're going to want to count this stub. In this particular hand, I'm actually not going to worry about it, and that's okay. I'll just do it on the next hand. Usually poker rooms let you do it in the first 3 hands. In a full table in PLO, it is good to know for a bomb pot, you're going to have 3 cards left over if you burn once per street. Meaning if you have a total of 3 burn cards, you're going to end up with 3 cards left over plus 4 cards for each player that you didn't deal in out of 9 seats. So 6 players is going to result in 15 cards. Okay, so now as the dealer here, I'm going to ask these players to show down first. And let's see, I'll try to make it neat as possible. And you know, I didn't plan out these hands at all, so they could have anything. They're normally going to have probably decent hands here. But what I'm doing now is for this money here and here, I'm determining who won both of these boards. So I need to be able to read a PLO hand really quickly. The starting point for that, which I have lesson number 1 of the Omaha Mixed Game course, which you can find the playlist for on my channel. Lesson 1 is reading hands like this. It really helps if you're familiar with what's possible by looking at the board. Can we see the board? Okay, so over here, I'm looking for King Jack. I'm looking for a set. Players have those hands a lot. I don't see any other straights. There's no flushes. There's no full houses. So I'm looking at queens and tens over here. And on this board down here, I'm just reading their hand first. I don't see any flush. I don't see any, meaning that there's only 2 hearts and 2 diamonds. There's not 3 of any suit here. So there's no way that they can have that. So I'm sort of just looking here at what the best hand is that they might have. I see a pair of kings and 8s. So they play king, queen over here. And then over here, I'm comparing that. They have a couple of 5s up top. They're not really getting anything. So over here, kings and 8s with a queen beats kings and 8s with a 5. So they're going to scoop the outside pot. So we take this, we kill it, and then I'm going to start awarding this. They take their bet back, and I go like this. I'm being careful. I don't want these chips to end up anywhere else. So now it's time for the next player. So do you remember who was next? So this almost was next. There's a small pot over here, and this player was eligible for it. So let's put their hand over here just so you can see. I like keeping the player's hand in front of them. So right off the bat, I'm looking for the ace because this player has 2 pairs. So any 2 pair with an ace is going to be better, and I see a 10 over there. So now it's aces and 10s. Oh, if I frame it, you can't see it as well. Aces and 10s. So aces and 10s for the top. And down on the bottom, it looks like the kings and 8s are still going to win. It's okay to take a second. Also, something that happens a lot in these showdowns is a player at the table will bring this like hurry up energy, and they'll start saying, they chop, they chop. The response that you give a player that's doing that is so simple. All you say to them is, you need to tell me what the hands are so that I can see them. Right? Don't point at them though. So you say, tell me what the hands are, and then they'll tell you. Players usually in spots like this, they want their winning hand to win, so they're going to like frame it themselves a little bit like that. It does help, but ultimately it's your responsibility to see it. So here we see that they're chopping this outside pot. So we're going to chop this one up. And in this game, the extra 5 just goes to 1 player. The poker room that I deal at says that the worst position, meaning the person who's going to get the button next in future hands, gets the chip. I've also seen the top board gets the extra chip. Whatever it is that you want to do at your poker room is fine with me. So I'm going to put this over here, put this over here, and now we continue on to this pot. And this player here shows, oh, do you see what they have? That's pretty good. So the aces and 10s, and when I say pretty good, I mean it's good for half the pot. The aces and 10s are still the best hand on this board over here. And down here, the 4-5 gives them a straight. So we frame it this way. So they get a straight with their 4-5 over here. And so now these players are going to chop this pot. So I'm going to show you that right now. So don't be afraid to actually stand up in order to help you in this point right here. I don't need to do that at my table, but I have done it at the real poker tables because they're pretty big tables. And by standing up, you give yourself the ability to really get in there and do this. But here, I'm starting with the black chips. I'm starting with the largest denomination. For a pot this big, you may actually end up seeing even larger denomination chips, but this is just what I have in this hand right now. So I'm starting with the black chips, and I can see them that there's no dirty stacks. You do want to check for that. And normally I would put this here and start matching it that way, but this stack's pretty high, and so I'm going to put it over here, save myself a little bit of space on this table. I'm going to get this out of the way, and I'm going to start going green chips here. I don't really recommend doing this, but when you have crazy scenarios, you can do crazy things. And I can see there's a green chip down there. I can see that because I'm at an angle where you can see the size of the chips. And so I probably would stand up at this point, put this over here, put this over here, or you could just go like this. Okay, look at this. So obviously you don't need to push all of this out at the same time. That would be a bit crazy. So I am going to handle the largest denomination chips first, put the black on there, the green on here, and I'm picking them up. because I don't want to knock all this stuff over, but it is a little dangerous to do that. Fortunately, you have the exact same amount here, so if something were to happen, you could figure out how much it was, but that would require a supervisor if those chips fell. All right, and now we go to the next stacks. Push this here, and this one around here. We really don't want to pick this stack up. It's scary to think about. And then over here, I'm just going to do the rest of this all at once. We'll go like that. And we'll go like this. And I'll even drop them down because the chips might have fallen. Whew. So do you remember who was next? That's right, it was this player. And here we go. Looking at their hand here, they do have queen 7 up top, but that's not good enough to win. And down below, they're going to have a full house. So you can see here they have this 8-7 in their hand over here. That's going to boat up. So they're going to get half. And the straight is no longer good. And this ace-10 is just crushing it here. I doubt that player would really be in this hand at this point, but here we are, huh? So as you're doing this, they're going to be watching you like a hawk, right? Like, this is a lot of money. They really do care what happens to this money. And you know what? We care too. So the extra chip here, I could put it here and stack the whole thing up. I'm just going to announce the extra chip goes here. And I know it's 5 chips, but you understand that this is a 5-chip game, a red chip game rather, and this counts as 1 chip in that way. So now I'm going to stack these up. I'm going to give out these black chips. You can do it all at the same time. I just didn't want anything to fall. And now we're over to this player. It's all in for the main. They used to have an all in button. They have it no more. And I'm going to put a real hand here. I took these out of this area just to show you. This is more like what somebody would be playing in this spot, where they've got the king jack and they went back door, but they got 3 kings on the turn over here. Honestly, this isn't even that great of a hand for this. Until the turn, of course. Now you might be thinking to yourself, they have a royal. Well, in case you didn't know, with Omaha, you do have to use exactly 2 from your hand and 3 from the board. So they can't use all 3 of these with these 2 cards. It just doesn't work that way. But over here, they've got the nut straight, king jack, and then they've got kings full of 8s. And that was not the actual hand that they had. I just didn't want to chop this in half, and you're fine. And so they're going to win the whole main. Congratulations to them. That's a funny hand, too, because all of the stuff they made came in real late. They got it on the turn here, and they were still losing to a straight. They got it on the river here, but that's bomb pot. So a couple other details that I just want to go over here. One, occasionally you'll run into something like a betting cap. People are playing a very large PLO game and they still want to do the bomb pot. They may actually limit everybody to, 3,000, 5,000, something like that, maybe even 1,000 for the bomb pot, where that's the most each person can put in. And as a dealer, you just keep track of that. It might sound stressful, but it's really not that bad. You sort of get used to it. It also doesn't come up that often, right? Because you're only dealing 1 PLO double board bomb pot hand per time you go to that game. So you might go to that game like once or twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, and then that particular hand is only going to hit the cap however often it hits the cap. Something just interesting that I find interesting, there's a 5-card game, a 5-card PLO game that they play sometimes where I've dealt it, and they only play it 8-handed because of the number of cards that are available if you give everyone 5. And they actually do an 8-handed double board bomb pot. And in order to make it so they don't run out of cards, they don't burn before the first flops, right? So if you think about that, that might feel weird, but actually it doesn't matter because you're pitching out all the cards, right? You pitch out all 5 to everybody, and then you're immediately just going and bringing the flops. So the burn card doesn't have anything to protect in that scenario. So I understand why they did that. They did it so that they could get 8 people in the game. They do use the last card, touching the cut card, which is considered a no-no in poker. That rule is one of those things where you don't necessarily think about it as a problem now, like why would that matter? It sort of came from the same place the cut card came from in the first place, where it's just game protection. It makes it harder to cheat, but they're not worried about that in this particular case, so I understand. But do whatever your poker room says. I just wanted you to know that that's possible, where you can have 5 cards per player, 8 players, 2 boards, and just 2 total burns, because you don't actually need to burn before the flops because there's no action after you finish pitching the cards and before you bring the flops. So when it comes to rake in double board PLO bomb pots, I have absolutely no idea what your poker room does. I know that the poker room that I've dealt this game at, they do a time rake per player, so everybody's paying time, so there is no rake out of these hands. I have absolutely no idea what they do for at rake rooms. Yes, I could call and find out, but if you're dealing in a rake room, just ask them and they'll tell you, and you just do whatever they say. Now, in the Hold'em bomb pot video, I did talk about how they'll sometimes have a bomb pot button that goes around the table in the opposite direction. And they also sort of have this weird scenario in some poker rooms where players don't want to participate in the bomb pot if they're in bad position, and then they do want to participate if they're in good position. I'm bringing this up because I've never actually heard a solution to this other than the bomb pot button going in the opposite direction, but I can tell you from what I've seen, it's actually fine. I haven't seen it be an issue in the rooms I've worked in. I've also been working in Texas near Dallas most of the time, and the players there are incredibly nice. And so there's not as many issues that come up as a result of that. I'd be curious in the comments to hear what happens in your poker room if this is an issue, and what the solution is. One other thing that's really interesting about bomb pots that sort of gave me a new perspective in poker. So there's this concept in poker from hardcore tournaments or what have you, cash games, whatever, where folding on a check in some places is like the worst. Players hate it. It reduces, like, let's say that this player checks, this player checks, this player open folds, and then this player has their turn. Now they only have, let's say it was just these 4 in the hand, now they only have 2 opponents against them when it's their turn instead of 3. It makes it a little bit easier to bet, and it changes the hand compared to when it was their turn. And so people say folding on a check, you can't do it. Some places even give out penalties in tournaments and stuff like that. Now, I'm not talking about tournament for a second. I certainly understand that. But I just want to tell you, up until I started dealing PLO double board bomb pots, I never really thought folding on a check. I was always like, come on, just check type of thing to the player. I wouldn't say that as the dealer. It's just what I would think. But now that I've dealt 9-handed PLO double board bomb pots, I completely think differently about folding on a check. The last thing I want to do is force somebody to wait 5 to 10 full minutes with their hand while it goes check, thinks about it. How much is the pot? Check, 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 check. Thinks about it. And they could have just folded and gone to the bathroom. Like, I've actually completely formed the opinion that I understand that folding on a check has that downside to it, but I don't care. Let's speed things up. It's so brutal when somebody who would have folded if they could have folded, now I'm and everyone else is waiting for them because they're having a conversation because they don't care, because there's no way that they're going to win this hand with their deuce tray 9-8 with all high cards on the board. And so I actually now believe that folding on a check, at least in PLO bomb pots, should not only be a rule that's fine, but it should be encouraged. Let the other players battle it out, and don't make this person just be stuck in like metaphorical prison while they're waiting for the next hand. The last thing we want to do is just piss off the players for no reason. If you like watching this video and you like learning from me, I do have a course online that teaches how to deal poker casino quality from start to finish, from scratch. You don't have to know anything about poker. I train you here on YouTube, start to finish, everything you need to know. All you have to do is just join my channel, click on the join button in the membership section, and just make sure that you choose the option you want. If you want to learn Texas Hold'em, you choose that option. If you want all the PLO mixed game type stuff, I have that option too. Thank you for watching, and thank you to everybody that has come and said hi to me in Texas Card House, in Dallas, and in Las Colinas over the last few years. Really appreciate the in-person support.